Tomorrow marks Youth Day. We take a look at why young people should not disengage from their political surroundings. The Public Affairs Institute's research report on voter turnout in the 2024 elections found that in 2024, just under half of those in the 20 to 29 age range were registered to vote, a decrease from the 53% who were in this age range in 2019. So voter patterns across the years have shown that younger voters are registering at much lower rates than older cohorts. Now, with the inception of the Government of National Unity, why is it important now more than ever for young people to engage with politics? Now, Cape Town Youth Collective's Jordan Pieters tells us more. Good morning, Jordan, and welcome to Newzroom Afrika, and thank you so much for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, firstly, what are your views around this?
So I think I might be the wrong person to have on the show because I completely understand why so many young people in South Africa feel jaded, disconnected from the political climate. We are celebrating, as you said, or at least commemorating 1 year of the GNU, and the violence in the Cape Flats has not stopped, has not abated. Gender-based violence has not gotten better. So the question becomes, when we talk about politics and young people participating in politics, what does that mean? And are there actual significant, substantive routes for young people to participate in politics in a real and meaningful way outside of voting?
And then how do you think that youth-led initiatives effectively influence how young people vote and perhaps how they behave?
So I would say I'm a person of history, and I think that when we look at the way young people participate in politics today, right, you have young people within political parties, you have young people in NPOs, and then you have young people talking on TikTok. But when you look at our history, when you look at June 16, when you look at the organizations of the past and the young leaders of the past, you see that young people were actually leading. Young people, the youth, were the cutting edge of South African politics. Many say that June 16 was actually a call to arms for the rest of the country. And yet, when we look at how young people are relegated to audience members in society today, even within political spaces, you realize that young people need their own spaces, right? So it's not enough to have young people in politics, in political parties. Young people actually need to have their own organizations. And so for me, one thing that I always go back to, and I maybe sound like a record, is that we need to look at the past in order to understand what has been done by young people, and so to understand what we can do as young people today.
What would you say are some potential risks or challenges associated with youth involvement in politics, and how do you think that they can be mitigated? I mean, you've made a great suggestion that young people need to perhaps, maybe they can have more of an impact outside of the government.
So I would say that, today there are various ways in which politics and the political climate is both directly and indirectly affecting young people, both on an international sphere and nationally, locally. And when you look at TikTok, when you look at these political commentators, when you look at the discourse, but also when you look at the ways in which young people have to absorb death on a mass scale on their phones all the time. We're also dealing with young people who are depressed and who are disassociating because of the intense amounts of information that they're consuming all the time. So what I always say is that... Sorry, please go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I would always say that a way to mitigate against that disillusionment, and then, I would say a natural progression from the disillusionment, is disassociation, is to organize where you are. It's to get involved in community organizations. It's to join a cultural group in your community, join a soccer team, a netball team, get to know your neighbors. The way we actually protect ourselves from that jadedness, from that disillusionment, is to build community. And I think young people, especially Gen Z, my generation, really struggle with building community. And so I think that that is the key, I would say, factor to ensuring our sanity in this very politically charged reality that we live in.
I hear you. We do need young people in the government, though. So my question to you would be, who do you think will lead the future of our country if the current youth generation remains disengaged from politics?
Hey, that's a difficult question because I think that political parties themselves have created a very negative space for young people, in that young people have to fight for positions, right? And I'm not saying this is true for all political parties, but I mean, when you look at the way young people in political parties have to uh, climb a ladder to get into parliament, to get to the top. And then even some of them, I think, are quite performative in their roles within parliament and the committees that they find themselves in. I would love to see a political party that is made up solely of young people. You know, I would like to see something new, something different. I think many political parties today represent something that has, I don't know, fallen out of reality, substantive reality. And so that's why a lot of young people didn't vote, because they didn't think that any of these political parties had the competency, the capacity, the ability to make any substantive changes. And so when you don't see any paths to solutions on the ballot paper, what is the point of voting? So I think we need something completely new. And I hope that newness comes soon because it's sorely needed. So yeah, I think that's the only path forward, something new.
And Jordan, what role do you think social media plays in shaping youth engagement with politics, and how do you think it can be harnessed for positive change?
So I think that with Gen Z and the use of social media, I think a few years ago we were very excited by it. You know, especially with climate change activists coming through. But I think that young people have also gotten stuck in a content loop within TikTok, within social media, in that if a topic or a conversation isn't trending on these social platforms, then people are not talking about it, or it doesn't become a topic of conversation, which I think is very dangerous because I think that detracts from the need for critical thinking, right? And so I would prefer, instead of seeing young people on TikTok, I prefer to see young people in libraries. And so I think we need to have some type of balance, right? I mean, as a TikTok user myself, I think that TikTok should be a space for education and awareness. But then the question becomes, now that you've been made aware, now that you've been educated on a specific topic, what is the next step after that? And I see too many TikTok conversations die on TikTok. It needs to be taken from the platform into the real world. So I completely think that TikTok is important, it's necessary, social media is necessary. But I think if it stops there, it ends up being very, I don't know, it creates stagnation. And so we as young people need to think of pipelines from the realm of social media into the real world. And I think that hasn't been done successfully yet.
Are there any historical examples of youth movements or initiatives that you think have had a positive impact on society? And what can we learn from them?
Yes, so I'm obsessed with SECO, the South African Youth Congress, and CACO, the Cape Youth Congress, as an example of that. So here we have organizations made up of high school learners, unemployed young people, students who saw politics not just necessarily as answering the big questions of, you know, national questions, but also as changing the everyday realities of people in their communities. So you had young people organizing around the cost of bread. You had young people organizing around the cost of a bus ticket, right? You had young people organizing around the fact that the high school in their community didn't have didn't have adequate resources. So young people organizing themselves in their communities around issues that was important to them, but also young people organizing around cultural realities. So you would have young people organizing soccer tournaments in their communities. And these were young people who went on to become, the ministers that we have today. And these same ministers who refused to give up power, even though, they as young people were able to lead, but now they are unable to, I would say, hand over to the next generation. So I think that there are so many examples of youth-led organizations, COSAS of the 80s, who were embodying, I think, the spirit of youth leading, youth organizing. And I think that a lot of those lessons have been lost. And I think the question of my generation, of Gen Z, becomes, how do we reclaim that spirit? How do we relearn those lessons? And how do we, as young people, stop waiting for people to give us leadership and take leadership ourselves?
Jordan, thank you so much for your time this morning.